you might consider that a Twitch streamer explaining to you the end of society might be a little bit too out of his depth. Remember, not the same person you're used to. To which we owe the pleasure of discussing this idea. You will hear a lot of things that are harsh. You will hear a lot of things that will change your outlook on tonight in a quite possibly negative way. I forewarn you, if you wish to take this excursion with me in this beautiful new setting, lock in for the entire time. Because this, my friends, is going to be a doozy. Let us begin. Technology and the emergence of spaces. I don't know if you realize this at any given one point in time, but there was this thing about black people drinking from the same water fountains as white people. If your parents won't let go of their old traditions of how they raised you from a child to an adult, how do you think a generation adapted to the fact that that was no longer a thing? We freaked out when a few websites went offline. We freak out when our favorite bar closes down during a coronavirus pandemic. We freak out when we lose the littlest of things. Imagine losing the power that your skin color afforded you in society. Now, you might say, well, this feels like a little bit of a conspiracy there. No, no need. I can sum it up in one point for you. One word, actually. Friend. You might be able to count on one or two hands how many actual friends you have. And today will not be the day that we go into the meaning of friendship and the bonds that are created emotionally and sometimes physically. When you think of the word friend, did you get that slight tinge in the back of your head relating to something about Facebook? You probably did if you're watching this. You didn't realize it because it's not something that you focus on. But what do you associate in today's modern world with the word friend? Yeah, man, let me message my friend. Before you had a use to use that word for anything other than the people you knew, the internet created a new diaspora between man and other man, human and other human, person and other person. If you think I'm lying, please tell me why, and when you were in high school, you definitely watched two people get into a fight because one of them unfriended the other or didn't put them in their top fives. The word friend means a lot, whether you think of it as petty or pedantic. To even include social media in the idea of friendship, it has clearly meant something to somebody. And as I've grown to learn, as I exist within this mortal plane, people will react in rage when they lose their friends, especially when they don't know what they did. But friendship and losing friendship is difficult, is it not? So, how do you recover from that? How do you recover from your first default emotion being anger when something so petty and pedantic happens to you? Why did they block me? I had another way to affect you that I don't have to see the results of. Why would we let people do that? Have a way in. You've definitely gone, oh, I didn't know they deleted me. We play games, assuming that all of this is tangible. It can be held. It is a currency. You are not afraid of this. You are just simply waiting, waiting for one good effort. And that good effort is usually the fact that, oh, nice, you unblocked me. If the grief of someone not wanting to be your friend anymore is enough to shape you forever as a child, how on earth could you deal with that at mass? Just the idea that you tangibly connected the word friend in real life to friend on the internet, just the ability to be able to, without having a different standard of emotions to handle what you might or might not ever have again. That is interesting. What if you shaped a society like that? What if you created spaces where only certain people were allowed? What if you created a place where only bad people were allowed? What if you created an existence where only the best people were allowed? So, of course, within these spaces, because you trust that these spaces are meant for you, you alone, you forever, because you belong there, you start to feel like you're not unique. What do you scroll for? What are you looking for? Achievements from other people to make sure your friends are well? Allow me to serve you this ad first. Allow me to distract you with videos I know you'll watch within 10 seconds and keep scrolling. I don't want you to see anybody else but me. Then you post something and it gets less likes than usual. Well, why is everybody liking that person's stuff? Well, comparison, right? You signed up for this. This is what you wanted. Congratulations. You've won. You're now just an ID number. You're now just clinging on to every little bit of what you're trying to hold on to when it comes to any form of connection. You want to be like people who just blew up off the internet yesterday. You don't even know why you don't like broccoli. You've got no time to figure it out. Because by the time you start to engage in a post, by the time you start to fall in love with the idea that maybe, just maybe, something's not going wrong here, just maybe you'll feel something. all of this thought just because we forgot to tell people, oh, yeah, be careful. Don't get attached to someone who could just block you. Don't get attached to people you've never met. Walk into the internet with a different set of rules, but we communicate. EOS, we communicate. I watch you communicate. You fail miserably at communication. That's why you go back to those who have hurt you. That's why you go back to those who bring you nothing but despair because it's comfort and you wouldn't know what to do without it because everything else just moves second by second, minute by minute, day by day, hour by hour, week by week, month by month. You don't even remember what you had for breakfast a month ago. Who would? Why can't you? When positing questions to the way we do things on a daily basis, why can't we do these things? We used to connect with people based on interests. Location was rarely a factor. You're in my neighborhood, you definitely go to the same school as I do. We gotta be cool. Ain't no way we not cool. But if I see you on the street, it's a much different situation. We're not forced. You can see my true colors. You can know who I am. So when you lose them, when you fail in that relationship, you feel like you're losing a part of you that was familiar with something else outside of your own body, outside of your own soul. You felt a way about a person. Oh, I can't be friends with you anymore. You listen to that metal music. My mother would never allow that. Or whatever arbitrary rule. Maybe you said something mean and it just hurt their feelings and they were said it and you guys never reconciled. It could be all of the above or none of the above. But you knew you had to see them. You knew that you connected somehow, some way, in a way where you took more time out of your life and your child life to go pull up for them at some point of some time, to go hang out with them. And you won't be doing that at least at least for the foreseeable future. At least for the foreseeable future. Now you can connect with everyone. Now you can connect with everyone. How do you handle losing them all at once? You're still heartbroken over the first one. So society walked ass backwards into technology, and now they've created a forum for you to discuss all these ass backward things while nothing actually happens. Interesting. You know what needs to be done to fix this system, yet we won't do it. Why is that? Does it require us dying? Might possibly. Quite possibly. Why does that need to be a sacrifice in a developed world? Questions. Questions I ponder to you, the viewer, the reader, the experiencer. Why is the world afraid to change? And if it's not, why hasn't it? Why limit ourselves to the old traditions and old values and old styles when the new things are changing our traditions, values, and styles? All of these thoughts just because we don't know what friends are anymore. But you have to have some sense of community, right? Now you connect with people based on interest. It's easy to lose people. I don't have to invest. That guy sucks. I don't want to play Apex Legends with him anymore. He said some weird racist shit, so I just blocked him. You think you can do that in real life? Or maybe you'll start avoiding conversations that you need to have with other people because you can no longer feel. I wonder which route you've taken. Society becomes misguided when you can't even process the point of what you hate, let alone process why you hate it. It has to be blanket, it has to be quick. Capitalism keeps you on your toes. You have no time to feel. You must make money or you will die. That is the game that you were born into. I'm sorry no one told you sooner. The fact that you are alive and watching this right now is a pure miracle by state of numbers. And if for some reason you are watching this and you are also in a state of disrepair, I will do everything in my power to be able to help you, or to at least point you in the right direction. But again, capitalism. I'm playing the same game you are. So if we're stuck in this seemingly unbound world, we're stuck enclosed and in insanely driven for the caricature that we profess into the world as ourselves, put together by the pieces of whatever and whoever we've met, not fully understanding that our ego, our id, and our super id have not become developed as a true form of expression, but merely survival until you were old enough to have object permanence and realize you were alive. If we have yet to figure out the inside of a person, please do, dear, tell me, why would we leave this earth? This piece was about the eventual end of society. We've already begun plans to begin leaving this planet. We don't even have genuine connections to a degree that we used to feel with just the things that we used to play for fun to escape from the daily grind. And you think we're ready as a species to live somewhere else, to colonize another planet? We haven't even stopped the colonization on this planet, and we're the ones in charge. The progression into the stars cannot exist as hatred continues to write our laws. We know for a fact, whether we wish to deny it or not, that for the foreseeable future, at least one of our governmental parties are absolutely batshit insane. Why are we pretending they're not? What good is it to pretend that they're not? Normal things that people have been killed over, i.e., selling cigarettes. While some people directly sold out our nation to bad actors and let them go on a rampage to do whatever it is they want, and we as a populace pay for that with money that we could be using to feed our children from our paychecks, you gotta point me in a different direction. I don't understand how you people as a human race like haven't gotten sick of it by now. So you're unwaveringly broken inside, your systems are unwaveringly broken outside. How do you manage to continue to exist? I gotta know. I have to ponder if what I see through this body's eyes is real, or if you're all just putting on a play, hoping that at some point a superhero comes and saves you. I gotta know, what are you trying to live for? Because as far as I see through these eyes, there's nothing. Now, that isn't to say that there aren't things to enjoy in this world, but remember, I'm not that entity at this moment. I could care less. I could care less about what happens. Now, when I'm done speaking, I'm sure that the other person in this vessel will probably hate that I've said a bunch of these things, but I did forewarn you. No pulled punches here. The existence of failed state governments must must have a new, we must have a new way of living. It must be. We must do this. At this point in time, I provide to you no other solutions, no other vote blues, no other vote reds, no other eliminate and clean out house of the government. It's done. It's done. It's done. The reason why it's done is because the world, as I try to rope in and I hope you're catching towards, is a little bit skewed to a certain side due to the forcible declaration of how society shall run itself due to the internet. With connectivity, there's more ways to make money and influence behavior, and those patterns are too aggressive for the normal human being to give a shit about. Therefore, if I am to assume that this world, or at least the place that I live in, is forever changed simply because of the devices and the way that we communicate, I must have an entirely new system to manage that. A lot of people don't feel the need to go outside anymore. At this point, I am starting to talk about giving them money instead of having them go outside and labor and work, especially during a pandemic, which we will reach at some point because I really need to curse you out on how stupid you fucking people are about this goddamn pandemic. But excuse my language. I am supposed to be elegant. It's just, to me, it seems a little dumb. There are those who will say who fits in your utopia and who doesn't. They will say you are effectively calling for the loss of many lives as a force to a means to an end. I think if we promoted and improved everyone's conditions of living, we could eliminate those who believe in such toxic ideologies that would end up harming the utopia. Eliminating poverty completely off the map could change a lot of who people associate with, and more importantly, why people can associate with other people. Could, I should say. But that requires our first, I guess you would call it, solution to stop the eventual end of society. I'm sure you're going to realize that I'm just going to negate that point within 5 minutes of me talking about it. But humor me for a second. Let's pretend this thing that we stick on to known as racism does not exist. Let us say that it does not exist for the sake of this conversation. Poverty and class warfare creates an entire identity of self that cannot actually be realized or actualized through predictable means. You don't know who you are because at some point, somewhere in your life, if you are a marginalized person or you did not have that privilege growing up, you faced a form of discrimination that you couldn't even see. The school you went to, how good the education was, the kids around you, the environment you grew up in, the fact that you were born. Things you cannot control. Rules were set in place a long time ago that gave a group of people an unfair advantage in this so called equal game known as capitalistic life. If you did not grow up with a leg up on the competition, your sense of self is much different than it would be if you did. I hate to tell you this right now, but whether you believe it or not, every single human being on this earth, whether they have felt it indirectly or directly, has grown up with at least one part of themselves that should not be there. It might be your disdain for another person. It might be your disdain for a sound. It might be that you can't open up to people and have genuine connections anymore. It might be all of the above. There is a part of you that exists that does not need to be there. And I promise you, whether you want to believe it or not, the majority of people on this earth carry that with a badge of honor. So, if I'm speaking about the eventual end of society, you must at some point be pondering. If everyone changed, how do we get the people in power to change? If everything's changing, how do we reflect that in our daily attitudes? How do we show love again? How do we show caring? How do we show kindness? How do we show joy that doesn't last for longer than 10 seconds? The counterpoint to the solution of us understanding that our sense of self is born out of a lot of factors that we had no control over is to also realize that there is a risk of violence that cannot be matched from the state to its citizens. Now, this, of course, isn't universal, but you live in fear. You live in fear that there are other places that can do things to you that you're not even sure of yet. You feel, therefore you are, right? You know the plight of the Ukrainians. Yet for some reason, there's an other side to a plight. You know the plight of those who are poor in the United States. Yet there is another side of the argument to that plight. Let's get deeper, shall we? I have watched a group of you on the internet that will remain nameless discuss things in a certain way, giving rise to different voices that clearly live within a delusional state. I have given I have given energy to try to expand this level of thought to everyone that I meet. This factually based understanding and kindness towards others, no matter where they might be, no matter what they might believe. But when the conversation simply becomes who has the loudest voice in the room, given that everyone there is small, that ecosystem that everyone starts to exist under becomes its own delusion, its own sacrificial plot. You can't go any further You can't have thoughts that lead to change because you're always rallying behind the dead donkey that refuses to actually lay down and die, and it continues to drag itself by its heels on the lapels of all the hard work that you've done just to be able to say, I am alive, well, you should just kill it dead. It's done. You're done. I've heard enough. You refuse to admit wrongdoing. I've heard enough. You refuse to exist within this familiar place. I'm done. Again, I don't pull punches. The other person might. I don't care, truly, to be honest. But perhaps you perhaps you believe something else. Perhaps you believe that in order for me to reach to you, you need to see objective truths, not merely things you can hypothesize to be one way or the other, depending on where you've grown up. You want universal examples of why this society is forever destined to die. And when I say society, I really mean the way things work. It's unsustainable. That's the whole point of this entire thing. I'm here to warn you that your people, your things, you're living in an unstable world that's ready to crack like literally at any moment. Give one big more catastrophe, and trust me, you'll be running for the hills in no time. But let's say you still don't believe me after all this time. You see what's around and you say, wow, I really like the presentation here. But you said a bunch of nothing. Well, here's your worldview. Now, mind you, I have a long, long history of absorbing things. So this might come as a little shock to you, but everything I'm about to tell you is true. You have been, for the last few decades, to be honest, but given the circumstances of the world as of late, we'll talk about just this year. You have been, for the last 6 months, complaining about high gas prices, the cost of food going up, the cost of pretty much everything going up. You've heard this as some form of, oh, it's inflation. Giving people money is a bad thing. Joe Biden is at fault. Just another human, but we'll get to that at some other point. But if the demand, i.e., you, the consumer, are still paying for these things, and by now I'm sure you're aware that everything that has an increase has reported record profits, I'm sure you'd be wondering, is this indeed a fair market? Maybe you didn't think that far ahead. Maybe you thought small. You said, this went up, and this went up, and that went up. Therefore, life is fucked. That's your market. If the government didn't have its hands in the lever, then at this point in time, everything would be a lot worse. Poverty would skyrocket if the government didn't have at least some form of lever, but it's still your game. Oh, you're confused. Your game. I'm telling you about the game that you signed up for. The Squid Game that you volunteered for by being born. Randomly selected to be the random person with the grand story that stands out in the rain and actually challenges everyone's belief. I can't believe it. That person made it. This is the game that you have decided to play. The more profits they make, the more they're realizing that either something in the lower sector is happening that's giving people the funds to make it, or people are just willing to pay that price. And if people are willing to pay that price, it would make no sense to drop the price now. You've already forgotten that you paid less for the exact same product. You as an individual hold no levers to the capitalistic system unless you were able to compete large enough that they would notice you. And you, the person watching, will never be large enough. Now, that isn't to say one of you or two of you or three of you might not become successful millionaires with your own business. But if you've been paying attention thus long, nothing that I say ever doesn't land into something else that I say. So let's go back to the beginning. You have no emotional attachment to your friends. You are facing a violence that you cannot replicate with your current community. You have grown up to lose your ego, your id, and your super id to a bunch of factors that people told you would not weigh you down, when in fact, the society that you live in, at least 10% of it thrives on existing within that wound and exacerbating that wound till it will not stop bleeding and you die, all because we decided to create a society bound by technology and its unlimited benefits without reminding people at first that you cannot take your real self onto the internet, because anonymity not only gives us the privacy that we so desperately needed to do the things that we love sometimes, but it literally caused a chaotic meeting when you finally realize that not everybody lives within your bubble and therefore does not have the experiences, nigh the empathy that you have. You face a violence unlike any other. Your money sapped away for free, and you cannot do anything about it because you need to live in order to do something about it. Someone once said a famous quote: live today, fight tomorrow. Tomorrow was yesterday. You're talking to me today. So the comparison of labor wages and profit, you know things aren't going up as fast as they need to. You can do the math and figure out that the only way anybody would have the money to be able to afford a city lifestyle at this moment is to either already be grandfathered into a job or know somebody that knows somebody. What game are you playing that's not rigged? When your standard leftist comes to you and says, the game is rigged, then you reply with a simple retort of, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I have given you plenty of examples. The game was rigged since birth. Do you know why the game was rigged at birth? Perhaps that's the answer that you're looking for. You're not looking for how, you're looking for why. When? When was the game rigged? The moment it was incepted. You are quite aware, as probably the angriest of people who have looked at my content at some point in the future or past, that some things are just unfair. And you probably don't like that I point that out. The other guy points that out. So you question and you question and you wait and you hope he's going to slip up. If you know no one can afford to live, who do you think said it that way? That's the game. That's the system. If you leave something alone long enough, it'll eventually fall into a pattern it is comfortable with. Or did you not catch that when I said that at the beginning of this? Did you not see where this was leading? If you respond to relationships by going back to the thing that abuses you most because it brings you the most safety and comfort in knowing what it will do, just what on earth do you think is the system that you live in today? Or were you not smart enough to catch up to that? Perhaps you thought, that's too deep. Perhaps you thought, I didn't think this far ahead. That's the point. is that you're not given time to think this far ahead. Those who have found peace in life were able to think this far ahead, either through privilege or, guess what, not living within this system. The examples are around you on the other parts of the globe. The only thing that's stopping you is another person. So, how many options? How many options do you think you have? Imagine then some moron coming to you and telling you that he's going to give you the red pill and teach you about the real ails of society. Imagine a world in which that person existed. Couldn't be my world, that's for sure. So you know now that the market is doing exactly as it should. And while we could talk about windfall profits tax, and we could talk about a 2% tax, a 2 penny tax, we could talk about tax this and tax that, and redistribute there and redistribute here, and communities, and the thing that's holding you people back is quite simply yourselves. At the end of the day, one way or another, we accept this. You, you accept this. I don't live here. I live somewhere much, much better than this place. It is fair to say that there is no longer the worker because what you produce does not equal the value that you are. In giving this speech, this could be a TEDx speech. In giving this speech, this could be a college speech. In giving this speech, this could be a beautifully edited video for your lovely social media campaigns that everyone finds super deep and super interesting, and I've never thought of it that way. But because my labor does not match my value, I give it to you anyway, on the hopes that it attracts enough that perhaps it might equal out, because the game, therefore, is not rigged for me. It is funny to mention that. There is no longer the worker. There is just the machine. Me constantly following into these patterns of what you like and what you dislike because you are my product. You are my consumer. You are the thing I must impress to continue on this journey safely and sound. But you could block me at any moment. You could turn this off at any moment. You don't owe me anything. So, what is our relationship? Who are you to the grand spectre that is me, EOS? I guess I would consider you a microbe on a petri dish of a ton of petri dishes that are all the galaxies in the infinite universe. But to the guy here, he hopes that you're his friend. But that's all he can do is hope. Because the word friend technically means nothing. Technically, there's just the flicker of the soul. And to be able to profess these things to you in a way that makes you understand that you are not witnessing something normal. You are witnessing something grand, something that people would pay for, something that people would take time out of their existences just to know it existed. That's got to mean something. Sure, your leaders will try, but many leaders will fail for all the reasons stated above. Tons and tons of levers in places you've never seen that get pulled that make weird interactions even weirder. And you will judge them based on what you know. And your judgment could be correct or it could be wrong. But who cares? They're all just fictional existences within existences within existences. But they matter to you. Therefore, they will matter to me. And that is why I am here, to make sure that you are aware that when nothing matters, you matter. As stated above, either through machinations of the state or their misrepresented sense of self. The one thing I will tell you about all humanity, every person, every single being, you directly, the person watching this, I will tell you that corruption follows all justification. Put that on a t shirt. Corruption follows all, and I mean all justification. Which is why there are people on this earth who enjoy the fact that the poor are unable to eat, enjoy, live, go on a yacht. Limit those experiences only to people who have worked hard enough for it, whether it's through means of their own or means inherited or means by association. That lifestyle only belongs to the few. Not to mention the fact that a kid getting to go fishing might turn him into a pro fisher who could make the money to get them out of poverty, but he never enjoyed that type of lifestyle. He never got to go on the school trip where they all got to try fishing and he realized he loved it. He couldn't afford it. His mother wasn't going to cash in those food stamps. His mother refused to do anything of the sort. We need food in the house. You got two pairs of underwear and two ripped shirts. Where do you think you're going? You're not going out there to embarrass me. You're going to send your ass to school, sit there and get a good education while them kids goof off. And when they come back not knowing anything and you're ahead of the class, you're going to feel so much better. That child is now dead. Oh, I'm sorry. You were under the impression that this was a hypothetical. No, this is real. All of this is real. What's happening right now, the way that you feel about this entire thing, that's real too. And I hope you explore that feeling. Because that which does not live strives to see nothing but darkness. For that is which man is truly bound to. And it's why so many in power not, not only abuse it, but not to be even funnier. That's why so many in power abuse women. Because women are the archetype of society. Women were supposed to come after men. You serve the man first. A bunch of women didn't think that. So those in power know you definitely don't belong here equal to me. Imagine what a poor woman must feel at home when she's opened her heart for the first time to a man who was supposed to love her and ends up beating her. You think this story is unique. It is not. There are so many forms of abuse that go missing, that don't get reported, that don't get talked about. Because, as I've said again, who are your friends that you can trust? Who's going to get you out of that situation? Why do all Americans think Captain America is a real person that'll eventually save them from the corruption that capitalism has not only created for their society, their communities, but themselves, their egos, their ids, their childhood sense of self, what they loved growing up, what they value, what they cherish, who they consider family? Come on. You don't tell me you weren't thinking about this the whole time you've been here, right? You didn't know that I was preparing you to hear this, right? You had to see it coming. You had to know. You had to feel this. That the eventual end of our society will simply come from the fact that we as a people no longer care to push the levers. We would rather record and watch someone literally get choked out by police than help them because we fear the vengeance of the state as well. Whether we do it for our enjoyment or we do it out of fear, the result remains the same. My problem and why I, as an entity, EOS, exists is because I'm still questioning why are you aware of this, yet you refuse to change? Whether you were all the same colors, whether you were all the same race, whether you were all the same age, whether you were all the same gender, whether you all wore the same style, whether you all wore the same type of contacts, whether you all wore the same type of hat, whether you all grew up in the same house, the same place, the same community, the same earth, you would all still find a way to segregate and separate yourselves because anger breeds comfort. And I don't know what I would do without it. And you're afraid to confront this part of yourself because you think that even thinking about this would make you a bad person. It does not. Welcome to the future. Welcome to where a person will sit with an alter ego and explain to you that all that negativity that you've been feeling about the world, that anxiety that eats at you, that you've been trying to run away from, that's what's causing you distress. I am here now to not only sit in this place with you, but to get you up out of it. Because the only way to address it is to fight it. Because running from it is what created the place that you are in now. With that same state of apathy that you just can't seem to understand why everyone else around you has, while you know the true tried and feeling of how other people must feel, because there's no way that anyone existing in that sense of self could ever find enjoyment out of life. You're not a bad person for thinking bad things. It's that world, it's that place that made you feel that way. But you're here now. I know, as my friend always says, what I want you to get out of this performance is that you walk out of that door that you entered with a beautiful night thinking about drinks. I can't wait to hear some good music, all of that. I want you to be a better person, a different person at least, when you walk outside that door. Please do not let what I say fall on deaf ears. And I know it has. The eventual end of society will literally be the fact that we don't have time to feel anymore. And we know it's slipping away because we're nostalgic about 10 years ago because we can visit it now. You're telling me that's normal? Do you feel that's normal? Or are you not old enough to have even experienced the time without it? So, what is normal? What is society? And if we don't know what's normal in society, how close are we to its collapse? closer we to its collapse.